to give you hold music. I'm back.
No worries. Yeah, I rebooted and everything was better, so.
I got some foods.
Sweet.
My wife made me a lovely looking lunch. Lovely looking lunch. What do you know?
Nice.
Okay, it's starting to get cold in here. Turn the AC off.
What are you up to today?
Oh, wait. Oh, you're back. Okay.
Hey, yeah, I've been here.
Sorry. Yeah, I went to get my food, and then I was talking to my adoring fan, my one viewers.
Nice.
Say hi to our one viewers. Oh, I don't know if they can see you. Oh, yeah, they can.
Oh, one viewer.
Yeah, in the Twitch UI, it says one viewers because they don't have the logic that does the if else to only show it in singular when it's
nice. So
it's literally one viewers, which is, I think that's the correct number for this podcast.
Nice.
So okay, so is your audio working properly now?
Yeah, once I rebooted, everything was better.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Reboots. Browsers are highly tied to the operating system. Like,
sure. So here's the secret to this whole technology thing. Like, none of us have any clue how it all works. We're just faking it.
Pretty much.
When everybody comes and says, "Hey, can you fix my computer?" No, we really can't. We have no idea what's going on.
Exactly. Yeah. Perfect. Oh my word.
So I hate to jerk you around schedule-wise, but somebody reminded me that I had already made an appointment at 2 to have a meeting with somebody. So, what are you doing, like, right now?
Right now? I just finished mowing my lawn, actually.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. No, it's been raining in Pennsylvania, like, nonstop. I think, I was looking at this one report, out of 19 days, I think it's only not rained, like, 4 or something. So, like, it's just been nonstop, which means not only does grass grow like crazy, but then you can't mow it. So.
Oof. Ugh.
Yeah.
Trying to mow wet grass is a nightmare.
It really is.
Yes.
So highly relatable to a tech podcast.
Absolutely. Right? Oh yeah. Okay, and start. Now
it's not even an electric mower.
Suddenly, it's a podcast because that's how technology works. Absolutely. Yeah. So I started listening to your podcast that you did with your wife, and then I didn't finish it because I got distracted. And then
boring. You can just say it.
No. It was interesting. It's like just reacting very quickly in the moment and moving very quickly to get stuff done. It's like such a, if you viewer out in the world have not seen / heard his podcast, you should go check it out.
It's amazing. It's everywhere except for iTunes so far. For some reason, iTunes takes forever to update, but it's on like Anchor and Google's podcast thing and like a whole bunch of others. But yeah, it's not on.
That's awesome. It's awesome that
it's not on iTunes yet.
It's like kind of real.
And I know, right? It was just kind of like this weird thing that I went for, like, we should do this. And like I ordered microphones off of Amazon, and like we sat there for like 30 minutes playing around with intros, and then we just kind of did the whole thing in one take, which was kind of fun. But
that's kind of like the not to spoiler alert. That's kind of like how you decided to change houses. Like you
pretty much
had an idea, and then you just followed through, and you did it with zero delay, zero beating around the bush.
I'm famous for that, for both the positive and the negative, depending on who you ask and when you ask.
Yes.
When it's just randomly selling our house out of nowhere, maybe it's a negative. Around work, it's a positive because it's like, oh yeah, that thing that nobody's wanted to touch because they're always afraid of like how much work it's going to be, like, and planning around it. And I'm just like, I'll just jump
boom.
Yeah, I don't. It may not be the best quality work at the end of the day. I don't know, but at least it gets done, right?
Well, at Facebook, they have all these posters and stuff like "done is better than perfect." So, if you can get to done in one day, what would take a month? Like, so you throw it all away. It wasn't a wasted effort.
And that's my at Elastic. That's like my team's mantra right now is that just getting something out there is better than perfect. Like you just release it. Like we can improve it. As long as it doesn't hurt the end user, like just get it done. Like we'll iterate. That's fine.
Release early, release often. Instead
Yep,
of
absolutely.
being so hesitant with what you do. This is not like, measure twice, cut once. You can cut it again.
Yeah. Well, I think that that's a little bit to Facebook, Elastic, and a lot of other tech companies. I think that's what makes it very different when you work for a company like that versus, let's just say, some company that has a programming department. Is tech companies understand the concept a little bit better, I think, of it's okay to fail, because it's something that really is semi-unique to the tech
Yes.
industry, right? Like if you
Yeah.
fail in construction,
It's
you
not
like
okay.
people die. Like if you fail in marketing, like you waste a ton of money and you could actually hurt your brand. With code, that's very rarely the case that you can actually cause damage
Yeah, that's true.
by just getting something done. And so it does take a different mindset that is relatively unique to tech companies.
Yeah, it's
um,
like, I mean, coding for like the space shuttle and things where you cannot do an update. The code, it's out there. It's
yeah,
released,
maybe
like,
maybe that matters a little bit
physically.
more, but yeah,
Yeah. So
exactly.
then you'd have to, like, have all your unit tests. You'd want to make sure everything is completely ready to go and
Yeah.
tested a million different ways.
But that's sort of rare, even in like the hardware space. Like a lot of the
Yeah.
hardware nowadays, you can just update very quickly,
Right.
and it has like a separate firmware than your actual software, which
Yeah.
allows you to do remote updates. So you can't even break the hardware even if you wanted to, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like
So
an Apple, like an iPhone. If you totally royally mess it up, you can still just get it back into recovery mode and reflash it.
exactly,
I think that's how they managed to root the Nintendo Switch, though.
it is.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a
So
security vulnerability.
yeah, what are you gonna
Maybe
do?
it is a risk. Yeah.
It's worth it. Moving fast is worth
Exactly.
all the security
Well, it is in
for
most
a game
cases.
platform,
That's
at
true. Yeah.
least.
Yeah. For a gaming platform, maybe I actually for a while I used to work for a company that did software that ran prison systems.
No pressure.
So that maybe not there. I mean, you are talking about whether somebody's like stays in prison or not. Um, was sort of
That's
like the
kind of
software
important.
control. So yeah, so maybe get that right, but
Maybe. Ah,
there's some more stories there. I'll tell you.
I would love to hear them. I
There are
might
some
have to
skeletons. Yeah,
have you
not maybe
back.
not on a podcast, but there's some skeletons there.
Literally.
Yeah. Uh,
Oh,
oh
that's
my.
messed up. Uh, okay, so I've been meaning to talk to you about this. This is actually an intervention.
Okay.
Um, this is very important. We we need to talk about the elephant in the room. The fact is, everyone knows this. It's time to come clean. There's no way Apperson is your real name. There's no way that you start an app making company with the name Apperson. That's
Yeah.
that's got to be
No, it's
fake.
real. It was even weirder when I used to work for Accelerator. I was Matt Apperson making apps for Accelerator, and like I actually gave I was actually working, and like people were going up to the CEO and be like, "Dude, there's no way that guy is really named Apperson, right? Like that's just a gimmick." No, no, it was fantastic. Well, it's funny. Like this is a cliche in my family now because on my mother's side, the family name there is Quicksell, and my uncle is in sales, and his last name is Quicksell, and so it's
Seriously,
just like, oh yeah, like it's like cliche names everywhere. It's fantastic.
seriously, that's
Oh, yeah.
just
It's
uh
like some
that's
like
delicious.
cheesy kids show comedy going on there, but yeah,
That's amazing.
it's awesome.
It's like a generic fake name. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, I love it. Okay, so that was a joke.
it's
But
fantastic.
yeah, so I know last time I talked to you, you guys were thinking about doing TypeScript. Was a decision
Yeah.
made? TypeScript versus
The,
Flow or
the
versus
decision was
nothing?
made, yeah. So a lot of the effort at Elastic, not exclusively by any means, but a lot of the effort at Elastic is moving towards TypeScript. So if you look at like the Kibana code base
Yeah.
on GitHub, you'll see a growing amount of TypeScript there.
Yeah.
And I was not involved in that decision making process personally, but I can say that honestly, like it's been hard because I've gone back and forth quite a bit personally on whether or not things like TypeScript or Flow or things like that should even exist.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a lot of pros and cons. There's a lot of weirdness to it, but I have to say overall, I've been very happy with it actually, and I didn't. I'll be very honest and say I didn't think I would be.
Interesting.
Um, but it's there's different levels, I guess, of implementing TypeScript, and it's one of the things that I think the TypeScript community kind of pushes out there a lot. Is like, hey, you don't have to go all in on this new typed language thing. You can kind of sort of do it.
Yeah.
And it's true and it's not true. Like I don't know that it's true in the extent that the TypeScript community as a whole kind of sells it as,
Yeah.
but it is true. So like there's a lot of times like when I like type like a corner of my application and then the rest is just like a whole bunch of like any everywhere.
Yeah.
And like I don't really care about it. And then like I go back and like, oh, I actually really want to like this isn't working right. So I'll like add more types to make it like that way I can verify it more quickly as I'm working. And things sort of slowly evolve. It's sort of like that slow evolution process that we were talking about just a minute ago of code in general, and just evolving it and not needing to be perfect. Like it doesn't need to be 100% typed.
That's definitely
for it to work.
how things worked at Facebook. Like when they went from the PHP code base to the Hack code base, it was an evolution. The war story is that like there was some team in there that, I mean, I hope I'm allowed to say this, that was trying to like rewrite everything from scratch using Python. And like that whole code base, they couldn't keep up with the development, so they just threw it all away and just decided, well, let's just iterate on PHP itself. And then they added optional typing. They added like JSX or XHP style syntax, and it just iterated it and evolved it, and kind of like Flow, Facebook's TypeScript, was the same way. They wanted to aggressively make it optional by default, and you can opt in as a little bit here and there, and eventually, get it everywhere.
Yeah, no, same sort of thing.
Yeah, but it seems less doable with TypeScript for some reason. Like, you don't get all the features unless it's all or nothing.
Well, yeah, so like that's sort of what I hit when I first started using TypeScript, because I'd used some Flow in the past, and I kind of liked how Flow was like that. And then when talking to like the actual TypeScript community and stuff, they're like, "Oh yeah, you can do the same thing with TypeScript." I'm like, I tried to do it. I'm like, no, you can't. Like, no, you can't. But then I realized slowly over time and sort of stopped fighting TypeScript, I guess, and realized that you can. It's just you do it in a different way.
Yeah, I think I still need to learn. I think I'm still stuck in Flow mindset.
Yeah, it's a very different, like it's the same thing from two very, very different directions.
Yeah.
But I can't say at this point that I think either one is better or worse, honestly.
So far,
I think my biggest question at this point overall, and I guess this goes to a larger technology discussion, is it best to pursue those types of things now, or with WebAssembly moving, like even this morning when the V8 team announced a massive performance improvement.
Oh, really?
In startup times for for WebAssembly using their new engine. Yeah, it's like 10 times faster, like super, super fast.
Yeah, and I saw somebody posted like a graph, like a can I use thing, and like WebAssembly, you can actually use it. It's like out.
Oh yeah.
And like Flexbox isn't even completely out. How long have we been talking about Flexbox?
Layout engines are hard though, let's be honest. Layout engines are hard.
Yeah.
Faster than an entire code compilation. We can. It works. You just can't see it. I promise you that it works. All the UI is scrunched up in this little corner, overlapping each other.
Yeah, and like web components aren't everywhere. It's like they're barely anywhere.
Yeah, web components. I don't know that ever will be.
Yeah, I was super on board with web components like before React was a thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, and then I actually used it. This is not better. This is worse.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, it was like if we didn't have React, then web components would have been a step forward, I think.
Sure.
But React just leapfrogged everything else.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, I was talking to Jordan when he was first inventing it. He took me into like some secret room. It was not really, but this is how I like to think of it. Like this room with like this whiteboard, and he's telling me this vision of like. And it's like, as he's explaining, it's like obviously true. It's like, yes, of course, that would be great. But it's like, we can't have nice things. I just, I'd been completely jaded for so long. We just can't have nice things. It's like, and so, yes, that would be great, but there's no way it's actually going to happen. And it really wouldn't have if it weren't for like Tomo really pushing it. So React exists because Tomo pushed it and made it possible.
Interesting.
Like, Jordan definitely, I mean, he was pushing it. Like, I don't want to get some of the history wrong since this is being recorded, but I would love to talk to those guys about that
We're
more.
both going to be in trouble by the end of this
I
thing.
know, I'm so in trouble. It's like this one viewers works for like Facebook security or something, and they're gonna
Like a
sue me.
lawyer.
Yeah.
Going to sell the information.
Whatever. But yeah, that was interesting. So many interesting stories about the history of React and where it came from. So like, have you been following Framer X at all? Have you looked at any of that?
I have. It's a pretty cool tool. I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't played with it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Have you ever been a designer or done any design?
I actually did design work before I did development work.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I wrote on the thing that I was going to ask you is like, how did you get into programming in the first place?
Yeah.
And when?
Yeah, it was actually, so I started doing some design work just like freelance, doing like interactive design, like web pages, things like that.
When?
Like a decade ago,
Like,
about 11 years ago.
okay.
So yeah.
That's like
So
2007?
yeah, it sounds about right.
Okay.
I don't know. I count by years that LinkedIn says I've been in a profession.
Sure.
Why not, right? So basically, I started doing design work, and one day I had a developer who was supposed to implement my design say it couldn't be done. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like this, you can't tell me that can't be done. I'm like, you just write code and you literally could just put pixels on the screen one at a time. You can make this work, I promise you. And it's like, no, I can't. And so I was like, fine, and I did it. And I was like, actually, that's pretty fun. I like that better than design. So I started going down that path, and I just did it like freelance kind of stuff for a few years, and then I got engaged to my wonderful wife, and was moving from Maryland to Pennsylvania, and at the time I was actually working for T-Mobile, doing like tech support in their stores, so like fixing phones.
Interesting.
And I was like, you know what, I could just change jobs. Like, I'm getting married, I'm moving. Why not change jobs too?
That's
right?
so you.
Like,
that's like from what I know about you, just like
the moment,
there's not enough chaos in my life. Let's add more.
Exactly. That's just how it goes. You got if we're gonna mix up one thing, I might as well mix up everything.
Sure.
So it's how I roll.
I love it.
So I ended up taking a job for a printing company. They printed medical journals, and they had like a small e-commerce platform that I was hired to maintain, and I made like nothing. But considering that my most advanced programming to date had been like cool JavaScript effects on a static web page.
I like making the title scroll across.
Basically, yeah. I mean, that was pretty much like hacking WordPress was basically what I had done to date.
Yeah.
It was a pretty impressive job, and I was probably overpaid even for the horribly low salary I made. And so kind of started there and did that for about a year, and then I like had an opportunity to work for a small, very, very early stage startup in Philly, but working remote, and kind of just went from there.
Oh, sweet. So you started remote like when? What year was it?
I was about a year and a half into programming like full time, and I went remote. Yeah, yeah. I mean, really. Being honest.
How do people trust us to do this? I mean, not that you shouldn't. We're very trustworthy, but
absolutely. Except for I don't know him. Yeah, so I've been doing this for years remote, and I off and on I've done some stuff that where I was in office for a while, but by and large, yeah, just been working from home. Can't say I would trade that for much of anything.
It's been very interesting. It took me a long time. I actually had a similar start as you, as I started in print design and then web design, and then they said, "Hey, you can't do that," and I'm like, "I'll show you," and then it's like the same deal. So
it does give you a different. It does give you a different sort of approach though to development when you come from a design background though.
Yes,
so I think it allows you to look at things from a user's perspective better, but I also think it allows you to work better with other designers. Like, I haven't done like true full-time design work in more than a decade, but when a designer hands me something, I can more easily take it than many developers. Not necessarily, I wouldn't go so far as to say most, but many developers. I think it definitely gives you an edge, because obviously design, and it's like the whole argument, like going back to the Framer X thing.
Yeah,
Like
definitely.
designs are still static. And so
Yes.
the developers get things and then they kind of just build what what the designer gives them. And then missing a lot of like the nuance that the designers, because the tools don't always have the opportunity to design into place.
Yeah, that's what I'm interested in Framer X, is that the the hope is that it will let you use your like production quality and production actual code in your designs and not the other way
Yeah.
around. Most design tools are like you design something and then you can generate code, and that your engineers will hate you. But
Yep.
this is like the other way around, which is an interesting take on it.
Which is kind of what the whole React sketch library was
Yeah,
supposed to do.
yeah.
It does
I
in
tried
many ways.
playing with that, but it was not. It's not. It hasn't been polished enough to really fit into an existing workflow seamlessly. Let's
It is,
say
I
that.
think it is if you're building from the ground up with it. It's very hard to take
Yeah,
something
maybe.
existing and kind of shoehorn it in, but it still doesn't have the
Yeah,
interactive nature that
true.
Framer X does. Like to be
Yeah,
able to take it and interact with it as if it were real.
that's gonna
Like
be
I think that's
interesting.
like the magic of Framer X, or at least what people say it is the magic.
Yeah. So another thing that I
So
was gonna ask is, how did you decide to go into React? Like you were doing PHP, and now you're like, I mean, people
well, there
have
was
heard of you in the
there was
React
an
community.
intermediary step.
Yeah.
So like what ended up happening was I went from PHP actually and decided, you know what, mobile and JavaScript are the future.
Yes. What year was
Um,
this?
it was very early. I think I forget, it was like a year after the iPhone came out. So when apps were brand new,
Okay.
just start to make apps.
2008 ish.
Yeah, that's about right. About 2009, I guess is
All right.
probably
Okay.
closer, but we'll say 2009. And I kind of jumped on the JavaScript bandwagon at that point and took a job with Accelerator, working with
Yeah.
Titanium Mobile.
Oh, very cool.
Um,
Yeah, I was
yeah,
actually around that same time. I was building an iPad CSS editor app using Accelerator.
nice,
Yeah, for the
very
iPad
nice.
1. And
Taking it back to the old school
yeah,
stuff.
it was actually had decent perf. But
Yeah, it
hijinks
wasn't
ensued and it
bad
didn't
for
work.
sure. But after I eventually left Accelerator, and did some native mobile development for a while,
Interesting.
and
iOS or
then
Android?
iOS, yeah,
Naturally.
naturally. But then that company that I was working for was shutting down the mobile department and wanted me to do native Windows development, and that was a no-go. Definitely was not going to do that,
Nope.
especially not with the old
See
Microsoft, right?
ya.
So I was like, nope. So again, this goes back to my nature. So we had just bought a house. We had like I think we had
I
our house
quit.
for like a whole like few months. We had I think our son was, let's see, that was February, so he was about 3 months old.
Oh
So
man.
3 month old, brand new house, and I just quit. I just came upstairs one day from my office. I'm like, I saw like a home office in the basement. I'm like, yeah, so I quit my job. And my wife at this point is so jaded to like these things that I do. She's like, okay,
Okay.
whatever. I don't
It'll work
care.
out.
Yeah, whatever you want to do. So that's when I started Apperson Labs.
Right.
And we focused on Titanium for quite a while. And I was still I was following the React community, but we didn't really do a lot of web development.
It was still super
Um,
early in the React community. What
yeah,
year was that? Like 2013? 14?
yeah, 2013.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah,
brand new still.
man, is that oh, wow? Yeah, I
Like
guess
in
it
the
would be.
public, I guess it was brand new.
Yeah.
Whereas
So
I'd
I
been
was
using
following.
it for years.
Well, la di da. So I remember like sitting there. I'd actually been out in Atlantic City visiting a client, and I was taking like the Amtrak train home, and I was like watching like a recorded version of Facebook's announcement of React Native. Like it wasn't even like
Oh,
officially.
sweet,
Kind of like,
yes.
here's like a beta. Like it sort of kind of works on iOS and not Android.
Yeah,
And I remember being like, this is it.
yeah.
And like I'm sitting there like sending like chat messages to my team, like everybody like tomorrow
This
and
is
for
our
the rest of
whole
like the
career
next
now.
week, take the week off, learn React Native. This is what we're doing.
Yes.
Like this is the future. And I remember just sitting on the train, like playing with it and being like, this is what it should be.
And you were
Um,
completely right. I had been doing React Native for like a year by that point, and it was totally the future.
oh,
Like I
absolutely.
could not imagine going back at that point.
And
But
so
then
at that point, we were learning React Native, and I was like, okay, well, if we're doing React Native, React is basically the same thing.
so you
Like
got
from
into
from
React
a
Native
programmer's
before React.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
interesting.
And so I kind of backed into it, right? So we're like, okay, well, if we're going to do React Native, well, as a company, then we're going to start doing React. We're going to start doing like more web apps because we have like the
We
same
can.
tech stack more or less, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So we started doing that, and then we ended up starting doing more like web stuff that we were doing
That's funny.
mobile. And so yeah, and so
Interesting.
then fast forward a few more years, and last year we ended up shutting down my company.
Yeah.
And I took up a job at Elastic doing React development.
Yeah, I don't know if
React
you
and
want
Node, but
to
yeah.
talk about the end of the labs, but
It's shameful. Yeah.
um
No, it was. I don't mind talking about it at this point. Like at the time, it was hard.
yeah.
At the time, I would have been like, "Dude, shut up, move on."
Yeah. It's been like a year now.
um, yeah, it's been. Let's see what it says. Actually, it's like almost a year to date since we
Oh
decided
crap.
to shut down the company. Yeah. So yeah, my wife and I owned the company at that point. We were 50-50 on it, and we had lost our largest client a few months prior, back like January, February-ish. And it was the time in between was super tumultuous, like even for me,
Mm.
because we had lost our largest client, which was during that time of the year was our slow time anyway. So like that was a painful hit. And then one of our smaller clients came to us and said, "Hey, we actually want to buy you guys."
Mm. Right. I remember talking to you about this at the time because I was going to come work for you.
Aren't you glad you didn't?
Like, well.
Um, yeah, hindsight, that was a smart move. So we were gonna get bought out, and the day we were supposed to sign to close the deal on the company, they had to back out.
Oof.
Um,
Oh, dang.
through honestly no fault of their own. They were dealing with some stuff that
Yeah.
had happened to them suddenly, so we were just a reactionary to that.
Yeah.
And so I kind of came back home. I'm like, I could fight to reboot the company. I built it once. I could build it again, but honestly, it wasn't in me to do that. Like that's not what I wanted to do. Like my
Yeah.
entire reason for building Apperson Labs was never to build an agency.
Right.
Um,
It just kind of
and
happened.
so it just kind of happened. And so I was like, this isn't what I want to do. And so we made the hard decision to shut down the company at that point and move on. So fortunately, one of the tech leads for Elastic had been um, after me for a while. Like, hey, you really like you don't understand. Like, you need to work at Elastic. Like,
Yeah.
it's fantastic here. And I was like, yeah, I don't see that being the case. Like, you're in this for a referral bonus. Forget you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And kind of just like dismissed it. But I was like, you know what? I'd applied to a couple places and had a few interesting offers, but nothing was really what I wanted. I was really looking for a company that had a little bit better semblance of a work-life balance. And so I applied to Elastic. I'm like, it can't hurt. And so I got to talk to some more people. I was like, oh, this is actually awesome. Like,
Yeah.
so at this point, honestly, like I kind of wish I had worked here long
Sooner.
before I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
but
That's kind of how I felt about Facebook. It's like I was aggressively not interested at working at Facebook for years. Like I first interviewed in like 2009 and they weren't willing to let me work remote, so I'm like, no. I
yeah,
regret that decision. No, it was like
nice.
2008. They just hit 200 million users. 200 million? Yeah, whatever. But
Nice.
I ended up working for them anyway and moving to California. And then working remote for them somehow. I don't know. It was
You're like, I moved all the way out here and still working remote.
yeah, well,
I just have much higher living expenses.
it was a
Um,
long story. It's a time
I'm
for another time. When I guess I'm interviewing myself. I don't know how that's gonna work.
that'd be fun.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Like, so Thomas, what do you? Well, yeah, that's interesting.
You do like one of those like split mirror thing, like views that way you can like switch sides in the conversation.
Yeah, like that one guy used to do on that one show, Colbert.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
used to
That's
do.
what you need to do.
That was funny.
Be awesome.
Yeah, what else was I going to talk about? This has been we were supposed to do this at 3, but then I had another meeting moved to 3, and then I had like so I haven't really properly
I've got a
prepared.
topic for you.
Oh yeah. Oh okay. Yes.
So I've come prepared.
Oh man.
Let's talk about state management in React apps.
Must we? I really love. You know what I love doing in React? This is what I've been focusing on, like basically the entire time. This is the drum I keep trying to beat into people. Like my whole career, I've been trying to do this, and React makes it so much easier. like 99% of components should be dumb. Really dumb components. No logic, no state, no behavior. Just like you take the design, you implement the design, and then that's it. It's just like that design is now a function. You can pass data into the design, and you get pixels, you get behavior, you get all that, and then you should do as minimal as possible to take your app specific data and plug it into your dumb visual components. Then you can switch out the visuals whenever you want. You can totally re-implement how this works. You can switch over to React Native. You just have to re-implement some of the components. But you don't have like state littered all over the place. You don't have like, behavior events should pass up. You should pass a function into your dumb components that, whenever you click the thing, it fires that function. The dumb component doesn't have to know or care what happened.
Yep.
That's it.
No, I'm with you on that. I think that a lot of times
where I like to focus, and the other stuff is I'm trying to, because I have much less expertise in that area, but I still have very strong opinions. My strong opinions are just not based on a lot of solid experience. So like Redux or Redo or however you say it, I absolutely loathe it with an insane passion, and I will tell you why.
Okay.
Because there are too many files. If I want to do one new thing, I have to write so many files and remember where they are. There's like, I really like, one concept should be like physically located, like the code should be near each other. Even if they're completely unrelated things, like this block of code should be this conceptual piece. It shouldn't be like, it seems like with Redux, it pivots that concept and then like spreads the complexity as a thin layer across your whole code base. That's how it feels. I don't know if that's actually true.
Well, I think developers have this tendency, I think, overall, to look for convenience for themselves.
Yes.
Which is a good thing. Like that's what makes developers good. But it also can
Lazy
well, yeah, I think it's too much of a good thing sometimes. And so like allowing access to state from something like React or like Redux rather, it kind of makes sense because you have a higher order component. You can kind of just put the data where it needs to be. But then the problem is when you need to either no longer use Redux, or if you need to swap out your UI layer, like hey, we're gonna port over to this way and that way, and you kind of restructure some things. Then your state management is now tightly coupled to your UI.
Yeah, and that's the phrase "tightly coupled" is like so. It hurts me physically.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. I try to decouple, and actually, I would give a shout out at this point to actually one of my previous employees, Dave Sabisky.
Where do I know that name? Maybe I know.
He's pretty popular in the React Native community.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, so you probably run into him.
Probably know him.
Probably.
Sorry, Dave. I forgot you.
Yeah, really. He really pushed hard at Apperson Labs for us to structure things in a way that relied as little as possible on frameworks.
Nice. Yes.
And I have to say, it was probably one of the better motives, because I've always kind of leaned that way, I guess.
Yeah.
But I've always ended up basically, in my leaning that way, created my own framework.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. So, like, his way of thinking, it definitely pushed, I think, myself and others to really evaluate what we're doing and be like, okay, no, you don't create a pattern, create some preventative measures that you can't go crazy and like one developer just completely ruins the code base, but at the same time try to be as framework-less as possible.
Yeah, I like that.
And I've taken that kind of approach to state management with React too, of being like, I don't like 9 times out of 10, like everybody kind of views it as like, okay, well, I have React and then I have like my backend, but I also need like this state management, and this needs to be something unique and separate and different. And 9 times out of 10, React has state management, like
set state. Like it was in
exactly,
it was in the initial prototype. Like
there.
I remember Jordan writing it on the wall.
Yep.
Like I don't know if my memory is accurate, but I remember it.
Yep. No, I like that's. I try to use that as much as possible. It doesn't always work. There are definitely times where you need more, particularly like on large scale stuff. Like I'll say this, like Kibana as a whole uses Redux
Yeah.
at the moment, or is moving to Redux. I think that makes sense, right? Like you have like a
Yeah.
million little sub apps that need
It's not a
connected
blog, you
data.
know. It's
Right. But like when I see people out there, I'm like, seriously, you have a single page app that's like 40 files. It has like 3 screens, and you're using Redux? Like, are you kidding me? Like, I don't understand that. Now, I will say my one thing that I do like to use besides just React, as far as like a library for state management, is unstated,
Oh yeah.
because it's basically like taking a React component and you just strip out any possibility of putting a view in there, but it works the same. And so I like it for that reason. Because it's kind of like that idea of using as little framework as possible. So like everything that you know about, or at least the majority of what you know about React component state management, exists in unstated. It just rips out a lot of view stuff. Unstated. So I like it for that reason. So like sometimes I'll use that, because that way I get the same concept, but it prevents like another developer from coming along and being like, oh, now you like this container component that literally is just only supposed to be business logic and state management kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And now suddenly adding views to it, now it's just like, oh crap, now I got to figure out what happened. And obviously it's unwittingly, but because it's a React component, why not add it, right? Like this is the easiest place to put it. And so like it prevents that without being like this whole other thing to learn.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. Somebody, I don't remember who at Facebook taught me this concept, but to give them a shout out that guy. But the concept of a pit of success.
Yes.
It was probably Tomo, or Jordan, or one of those guys. Sebastian. It was Sebastian. Maybe
you're gonna have to go back over this podcast and like dub over your like, I don't know what this is, with like
it was this guy.
Like, randomly. Exactly. It's gonna be hilarious.
So the pit of success is like, you should you should design all your APIs and everything so that by default, on accident, you will accidentally do things the right way. And like all the foot guns are aimed, all the safeties are on the foot guns, all of the, silencers are off. Like if you do shoot yourself in the foot, you want the biggest, loudest noise possible. It's like React's dangerously set HTML. It's like,
exactly.
It's named that for a reason.
Oh
you're doing this, you're doing something weird.
I love it, because
bad, but it's weird.
I just did that. I got removed in the pull request because we were like, okay, we can't actually put this in the code base. But we built this one section of the code, and I named a property like, if you try to access this property from anywhere other than this file, you will be fired. We're like, okay, we can't actually put that in the code base.
Why not?
This is an awesome variable name. It was awesome.
Yeah, there's stuff like that all over the Facebook code base, because they're so big about constantly iterating and moving forward that they do code mods all the time. It's part of the process.
Can I say I've never learned how to do a code mod?
I just look up Composer, what, and he'll just do whatever he does. He's the master. Like, I'm sure there's a better way of pronouncing Composer, but I've always pronounced it that to amuse myself. You know, the guy who made.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
We were in Moo Tools together, so I've known him for like since you were a designer. I've known him.
Did you know? Because who? Oh no,
he's great.
Was he Moo Tools or was he Django? Chris. Shoot, I'm gonna have to look it up now.
Chris Shoot. I don't remember Chris Shoot.
You don't remember Chris Shoot? Okay, hold on. No. I have to. And now it's gonna bug me because I'm. Hold on.
This is why doing things live is so important, because now we can't go back and edit this.
So Chris.
Now I have so much free time.
Let's see. I'm pulling up here. Come on, slowly. If it loads. Chris Barber.
Chris Barber. I know that name sounds familiar.
Because he was over at Moo Tools.
Was he?
Yeah.
Chris Barber? Now I gotta look this up.
Many, many years ago.
mootools.net/developers. Here we go. All right. Chris Barber. Okay, so this is basically a who's who in the React community. Like Sebastian, Fabio, Scott Kyle, is he doing? Yeah, here's Composure. Christoph Hoyer? How do you pronounce that? You'd think I'd know that since I've known him forever.
You'd think.
Cassins, he's doing Relay now. I wonder what happened to Arian.
It's CB1 Kenobi is his handle.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Guillermo. Man, he's awesome. Yeah. Tomo. Yeah. I don't know.
This was years ago though, so who knows?
I don't know. Yeah, he was probably involved somewhere somehow that I just, maybe it was before my time or after my time. I don't know.
Could be. It was long ago.
Yeah. Moo Tools, good times.
Yeah, I remember when Moo Tools came out.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah, I was doing like, it was almost.
But you know, this is actually a great. I'd actually like to talk about this. So like, I'm the type of person that I hate bike shedding conversations.
Yes.
About programming.
Yes.
And so like we're talking about stuff that is not even like was popular not even like a decade ago.
Yes.
Like, when was the last time Moo Tools was like a serious contender for building stuff, would you say?
I think every single person in the Moo Tools community moved over to React day one as soon as React was leaked.
Okay. So we're talking what, maybe 5 years ago? Like, what was that?
There's probably 1% of the internet probably still uses Moo Tools somewhere. Yeah. I hope.
But like,
though.
Yeah, really. But like, so developers like to bike shed about like, oh, should we use like back then? It was like, okay, we have Moo Tools, we have Scriptaculous or whatever, or we've got jQuery, we've got you were arguing about libraries like that years ago.
Yeah.
And nowadays, then fast forward, and it was like, okay, well, should we use React or should we use Angular or should we use whatever?
React.
Right. Well, yeah, React was obviously the right choice there. But even if it was even if you went with Angular and like you were wrong, like we're still talking about like things get replaced very quickly.
It's not so bad.
Right.
Probably.
I think a lot of times developers as a whole, like it was a problem that we faced at Apperson Labs. It's been a problem that I've seen throughout my career of developers trying to build things to last decades.
Right.
For the off chance that your application might be one of those that like is built right the first time and nobody ever touches for like 30 years. And it's like, okay, that does happen occasionally, but it's rare.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. Like that would, in my opinion, that's like a bad thing.
Yeah,
like,
that's a good point, though. I mean, we don't think about the kind of the shelf life of these things.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, like, I like the attitude. I forget. Like, there's been a bunch of people, I guess, that have been pushing the attitude of like build things that are easily deletable.
Oh, interesting.
Like make it so that it's not. Don't make it so that this is really really solid code. Like obviously that's a secondary focus there. But your first goal is to make it so I could easily rip out an entire piece of functionality easily.
Yeah.
And replace it easily.
That's kind of
not so that like I build it all around this new architecture so that we can overhaul the architecture when next big new shiny thing comes out.
That was part of like one of the inspirations around the way Moo Tools was done. Is like JavaScript is terrible. Let's just fix JavaScript and then build on top of that.
Right.
Like kind of building 2018 era JavaScript in 2006.
Isn't Moo Tools though what caused the problem with the smoosh gate?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to verify that.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a successful implementation of that concept, but that was like one of the driving forces. Like instead of writing it your own thing, let's just like get all of the next version of JavaScript and implement it today. But now I think Babel,
I don't know,
and Webpack kind of solve that problem at the compiler level. But back in the day, like the concept of compiling JavaScript was so disgusting. Nobody was interested in doing it.
Yeah. Well, I can understand why. I mean, it's still not exactly the cleanest thing today, let alone nearly a decade ago. So I can't say I blame them.
I mean, even like CommonJS, like require and export didn't exist until like Node and Narwhal and stuff like that back in. That was just, man, how long ago was that? 2008?
Man.
2009? I don't remember now. Guillermo was like, You know him from Now and Next and
Yeah.
all that stuff. Yeah, he was trying to convince all the MooTools people to do Node.js back in the day, and so many of them were like, "Nah, I'm not interested," and I just couldn't get it. Like, I tried to dabble with it, I just didn't have the time at the time.
Right.
Man, I should have. I should just do everything that guy says. He's just like,
That's
he knows what's up.
usually that's usually good advice. Like he says, do it. Yeah, he's probably gonna get.
Yeah.
He's probably got.
Yeah, he's the one that turned me on to Docker. Also, man, I've been playing with that. Super good.
Yeah, I remember the early days of Docker.
Yeah.
They were good times.
Yeah.
I remember I built a tool for managing Docker with Node.
Oh, that's fun.
That was awesome.
You can manage Node with Docker and Docker with Node.
Yeah, I made a complete. I actually for a while I tracked to same day release changes on Docker's API,
Oh, cool.
and so it gave you Node access to the API to everything it could do. Yeah.
Yeah, I once implemented the Android debugging bridge for Photoshop.
Sweet.
So you could have Photoshop talk to your Android device.
That doesn't seem like something the average person would do on a daily basis.
No, but I could.
That's not even what the average developer does on a daily basis.
No, I did it for a reason. I'll have to tell that story one of these days.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool. But yeah, no, I think overall, I think the mantra of just trying to build deletable code is a good idea.
Yeah, I think
I would like to promote more in the development community, because like so often I think it's like an ego thing. Like you feel like you're building this big thing, it takes forever to build, and you put like your blood, sweat, and tears, and you want to be like, this thing needs to be able to live for at least 5 years, and it like dies in like 2 years. Like, yeah. And like even if the application still exists, like 90% of the code is usually gone. So like it's very rare, and usually the only time that like an application exists in any sort of meaningful state long term is because everyone hates it, and the only way to get rid of it is to rewrite the whole thing, because it's like so locked in on this technology that nobody wants to use anymore.
Yeah.
So like even stuff that does exist usually only exists because it's at that point viewed as so poorly written, when at the time it was probably like a shining example of what to do.
Yeah, it's like people who know Fortran and COBOL and stuff are so needed because nobody else wants to go learn these things. They get to work on all this legacy code. So like having jQuery skills in 2018 is actually useful, because someone will pay you to live a horrible life fixing somebody's broken jQuery nightmare.
Exactly.
Yeah, which I never want to do again as long as I live.
Yeah, jQuery, it served its purpose.
Yeah, I didn't give it as much credit as it deserved back in the day, because I was, strictly in the MooTools camp, and
sure.
But like it was good. It was good for the world. Like I'll have to interview John Resig, see what he's up to these days. I don't think I've ever talked to him.
Fine. But yeah, no, I think that the community just moves quickly.
Yeah.
Preparing for change is better than trying to find the best solution now.
Yeah, so we need to tell future people, like in 5 years, React might not exist. There might be some.
I actually hope it. I really hope it doesn't. Like I really hope it doesn't. I love React, and I really hope it doesn't.
There's got to be something better. Like Reason ML. That's the next thing that I really want to get into. So cool. Another, Jordan.
I like Reason.
Jordan thing.
Reason is nice.
Yeah. Have you played with that at all?
I have.
Yeah.
I like it. The OCaml stuff seeping through, I don't love.
Yeah, I just don't know enough about
syntax.
it to have an opinion.
Like I like it, but it definitely feels like not.
They need to figure out the async.
I'm not ready to build an app with it. I think at this point I'm just going to stick with JavaScript for as long as possible, because once WebAssembly becomes more of a thing, and it's definitely trending that way, like why would we use JavaScript or even Reason if we can use like Go or Swift or Rust?
Yeah, Rust I've heard is really pivoting hard at WebAssembly.
Go is making a lot of strides too.
Is it? Okay. Yeah, I need to look into Go.
Like what I like about Go is like Go, there's compilers out there to compile to native mobile too. If you write Go and compile to WebAssembly, like imagine if you created React bindings for Go, and you could do React Native and run with Go Native.
Interesting.
Instead of being JavaScript, you wouldn't need an interpreted thing in between.
Well, can you
could
that
use the same code base
iOS?
for what? Go?
Yeah.
I believe there's a compiler for Go for iOS. I know there is for Android. There's no reason not to.
No reason not to.
Because I think it compiles down to like C or
Interesting.
something like.
Yeah, I was super into I forget what it was, like Rust back in the day. I was in the Android performance team, and just looking at all the nightmarish stuff of just legacy Android, everything on the main thread, and just really wishing we could do something better than that. And then Rust was coming out, and they're building that new browser based on Rust, and I'm really excited about that. But it's just like it's been years, and it's still not the future yet. Come on.
Go by the way, it does compile down to Objective C.
Oh, really?
So,
interesting.
I thought it was C, but yeah, it's Objective C.
Huh,
so yeah, so like
weird.
you could have literally a native apps and JavaScript apps from the same code base.
Yeah. Well, I've heard
and not like native like React Native where there's a bridge, but like you could actually write native code.
Interesting. Yeah, I know. I heard like the React Native team is like going back to formula and rethinking everything from scratch or something like that, which I think is great.
I have to applaud them for that.
Yeah,
honestly,
definitely.
Like that's a really hard thing to do when you have something as successful as React Native and go, we went the wrong direction.
Yeah, I'll have to tell some more stories about that one of these days.
Like that's a really hard thing to do as a developer, but it's to be applauded. I think more developers should be willing to do that.
Absolutely. They did the same thing with Relay, like Relay 1 to Relay 2. I was there.
Angular did the same thing too. When they realized that the React way of doing things was superior, they changed directions too.
Yeah, I need to learn Angular. I'm working on this Angular thing as a volunteering project, and it's just, I don't want to go in there like, I know better than everybody, we should just switch it all to React. Like, no, it's Angular, it's going to stay Angular, I just need to learn Angular. And it's just been an uphill battle, because it's just so different.
Break your brain a little bit?
I hate being a noob again, but, I love it at the same time. But I gotta...
Is it Angular or Angular 1?
I think it's Angular 6.
Oh, that's not bad. Okay.
Yeah.
It's new. I tend to classify Angular as like Angular 1 and new Angular. Like anything past 1 is very different than 1. Like Angular 1 is just bad. Like I'm not sure why anybody thought that was a good idea. Like anything past Angular 1 is not terrible.
Yeah.
In my book.
So I hate to do this to you, but it is 2:30, and I promised to call somebody at 2, and then I told them I would call them back at 2:30.
Nice.
And now it's 2:30. So so I'll have to talk to you again later. We should do this more often, because like I didn't get through like 10% of the material I wanted to cover.
Cool. All right. Yeah. Well, it's actually funny you say that, because now I have a phone call. So.
Okay, cool. Perfect timing.
All right.
So I'll see you later.
I'll see you.
Bye. I have a call. I'll give a call too. I have to go. We all believe you. All right. Okay, so I still have 2 viewers. Not sure what to do now. Oh, there we go. It's back to just me. Okay. So I gotta call this guy about this thing. I guess I'm gonna hang up the live stream, because I don't have his consent to like stream his phone call live. So next time I should, but not this time. So thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you later.